Welcome to another edition of Between Two Great Lakes, a podcast by Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper. I'm Adam Zaremski. Now, New York is a Great Lakes state with Lake Erie and Lake Ontario bordering its western boundaries. We want to talk about and highlight all things related to that idea, as well as share things we are working on at Waterkeeper, such as important advocacy efforts, restoration projects, and fun things to do and explore along the Buffalo Blueway. Thanks for listening. Now onto the show. So for years, Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper has gathered data to look at the health of our waterways and to help guide us in advocacy efforts. What is collected and how we do it is a varied approach. So to better explain that for the public, I'm here with our own Robert Cody, Project Coordinator for Community Engagement. Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Doing very well, Adam. Thanks for having me.
This is a busy season for you. You're getting ready to work with people to get out there and help us know what's happening in the Niagara River watershed as far as data collection, gathering a lot of information. There's a bunch to this. I'm still new to Waterkeeper, and I've been seeing what you're doing. And I guess we'll start off with a big one of, why are we gathering data?
We sample for really a ton of different reasons, and as you mentioned, we take a pretty varied approach, so it's good to cover from a high level. It allows us to keep track of the progress at our restoration projects, monitor both historical and contemporary sources of pollution, inform the public of the state of our waterways and potential human and environmental health impacts, both at popular recreation areas and all throughout the watershed. And it really helps us fill in data gaps that exist between other groups and organizations that do similar work. It's really useful to have additional eyes and ears in the water where we can't be.
And what do we keep a watch on? What are some of the metrics you're looking at and things you're trying to find out?
Yeah. Long answer, I guess. Exactly what and where we monitor changes slightly from year to year, but in general, we have a couple different programs that fall under the umbrella of what we call River Watch. This includes staff-led E. coli monitoring in popular recreation areas and known combined sewer overflow locations, and volunteer-led efforts to track forms of plastic pollution, including nurdles, which are those little bits of plastic that are used in larger plastics manufacturing. We also have volunteers that monitor harmful algal blooms and monitor what we call baseline water chemistry, in which volunteers sample water for a couple different parameters that can inform us of the general state of our waterways all throughout the watershed. In the past, we've also led some pilots to utilize different forms of technology that can track, for instance, toxins that result from those aforementioned harmful algal blooms in the water, as well as certain forms of nutrient runoff. Our work is really all-encompassing, and it is really a mammoth undertaking that wouldn't be possible without the dedication and support from our volunteers.
So yeah, it's fantastic that we do this work. It's great we can cover that, go out there and get this information. But aren't there other agencies to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of gets back to what I was mentioning earlier with those data gaps. While there are other organizations and agencies that do similar work to us, think the DEC, and namely in the realm of water chemistry and E. coli monitoring, it's impossible for everyone to be everywhere all at once. Our work aims to fill these data gaps and create a more holistic picture of the state of the Niagara River watershed, and helps us keep track of specific locations of relevance to our work. Our regional partnerships, also work to create a broader picture of the state of the Great Lakes and specifically Lake Erie.
We can take that information then and use that so we have projects we want to identify.
Right.
We'll go out there and say, oh, this is something we should go do.
Right, absolutely. And so, if I'm thinking specifically of our Gill Creek plan, where through our work for years, we've been able to kind of monitor sources of pollution, impacts of Gill Creek watershed, and kind of identify both potential sources and just local baseline conditions that can help us inform strategies for restoration, right? So, if we're thinking about our baseline water chemistry monitoring and we've been monitoring a specific area for a couple of years and the pH is out of whack and the dissolved oxygen levels are really, really low, that can inform our strategy.
So we start with the data in a lot of cases. We're looking at it first and then saying, okay, now here's a reason, so we can back it up to say this is why it's needed to do restoration work maybe.
It goes both ways. So, for instance, we are aware of a lot of historical sources of pollution. Like, we don't need data to tell us that the Buffalo River is severely impacted. It does help in our mission, but it's kind of a patchwork, right? Sometimes when we're looking for areas for new restoration projects, we'll look back to our data. Other times it's kind of the reverse, right? Where we know that we have a restoration site that's, a couple years established, and we want to make sure that it's having the impacts that we want it to have.
So now this doesn't just magically appear. You don't just
have your arms open and all the information comes right to you. I'm sure it'd be a lot easier for
Yeah, I wish it was.
you. We have to obtain that. So how are we collecting the data, and who's doing the work to get all this information?
We collect data through a bunch of different means, both as volunteers and staff. On the less complex end of things, we have volunteers record really simple observations of our waterways through pictures on their phone, and which they upload to the Water Reporter app, which I like to say is kind of like an Instagram for water. Those can be tagged to Waterkeeper's page, so they show up directly on our social media public-facing page, which we can then, kind of take a look at. It's probably the easiest way to get involved in our work, and also pretty useful for us in terms of monitoring specific sources of pollution as well as HABs. Like I said earlier, we can't really be everywhere all at once, so it's really helpful to have these kind of touch points with our volunteers. But it doesn't have to all be that complex. For instance, those nurdle patrol volunteers are out in the field collecting data and nurdles with really simple equipment, forceps, trays, and pictures on their phones. On the other end of our programs, we have our kind of more complex multi-sensor probes, which are a fancy piece of equipment that our baseline volunteers use to monitor those parameters that I mentioned earlier, temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, the stuff that kind of gives us a more holistic picture of the water quality at a specific area.
Pretty much anyone can get involved.
Yeah.
And I mean, you talk about this Water Reporter app.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a super simple download. You can find it on pretty much every app store, and creating an account is super easy. What I do, just to keep our volunteers engaged on a monthly basis throughout the year, is once you sign up and you're a member, or you start to follow us on Water Reporter, you're added to a list that I can then use to contact you on a monthly basis to kind of provide challenges and keep it interesting. So, for instance, April is our spring sweep month, and so the challenge was to have our volunteers who are engaged with Water Reporter go out and take pictures of sources of plastic pollution, specifically near waterways. And, we have a lot of volunteers who are chomping at the bit every month to complete those challenges. So it's a really great way to kind of identify potential sweep sites or what have you. So it's a year-round effort, where some of our programs kind of only exist for part of the year. But if you really want to learn more, you should just join us on our Water Reporter page.
What's our account?
It's at BN Waterkeeper, just that. It's like all our socials.
Perfect.
Yep. And you can go as far as to tag our group when you post those, and they'll be automatically added to our page.
So I go out there and finding plastics. I can start doing that. Tag Waterkeeper, this Water Reporter app. You'll get that information.
Yeah.
And you'll see it. And then you can use that, with all this other information you're gathering.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you want to go the extra mile and just take pictures of whatever you see on the waterway, that is also useful to us. There's no such thing as too much data. And it is really helpful for us to kind of keep an eye on everything that's going on. I do check that page regularly. And for instance, if somebody were to post a photo of a potential harmful algal bloom, that would be something that I would like to know about, when it happens. So, it's also useful in that aspect as well. Our training on that side of things, it varies from program to program, as you might imagine, but often includes some sort of in-person element with a staff member and some additional training through virtual materials. Our staff like to communicate directly with any potential volunteer and work with them to make sure that they feel comfortable doing the work that we ask of them. They're familiar with the tasks that they have to do, and to make sure that we're on the same page.
So say I've just completed a training in one of the courses. They're different in each way. You're going to make sure it's tailored specifically to the volunteer. What might I be doing when I go out there, some of these?
In general, our sampling season runs from April or May through October, so it's only about 6 months out of the year. And our volunteers are engaged at a minimum of once a month. You might be assigned to visit a specific site or set of sites once a month, like our baseline volunteers, or more generally to keep an eye on different locations around the watershed, as is the case for our monthly Water Reporter challenges and our NERD volunteers.
So they get this information, or I get it if I go out there and I should volunteer. We'll send it back to you. What's happening with that?
Yeah, I kind of touched upon this when we were talking about Water Reporter. First off, we like to personally take a look at all the data. Whether it's a photo, whether it's a data sheet, whether it's sent to us via email, or even just, a comment that somebody sends in. This usually informs the next steps that we take with said data. Eventually, we upload everything that we have on a monthly basis to our Water Reporter account, which is visualized in really cool maps, both there and on our website. For our E. coli data, at any values that are above a certain level, which we call the beach action value, are flagged for notification on Swim Guide, which is a helpful website/tool that we use to inform the public about potential safety issues at recreation areas and keep up-to-date information about what we collect in the field. If anything more serious comes across our desks, though, we work with our partners in the area to make sure that the word gets out appropriately and that the public is made aware of any potential water quality issues, including spills, harmful algal blooms, and other things as well.
How has Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper been gathering information like this?
Oh, well, longer than I've been around at Waterkeeper. In some form or another, we've been at this since our inception, but the first Riverwatch report, which kind of summarizes all the work that we've been talking about, was issued in 2012. Been going strong ever since.
And you've been here for how many years now?
Just coming up on 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems longer. You seem very well into the program.
Well, I started off running, I guess. When I joined on with Waterkeeper, it was the height of the field season. So my orientation was really just trial by fire, I guess. Yeah, thrown into the deep end. And I think it helped me learn really quickly. It helped me get acquainted with the volunteers quickly and establish really great relationships with our team and our volunteers all across the org.
I can see that totally. Just, the knowledge that you've had from the little time I've been here has been impressive. I guess in that time, are there things that have surprised you about these results?
Absolutely. One of the cool things that we've noticed over the years of our data collection is the really measurable impact that healthy and restored shorelines have on our water quality data. These restoration projects that we've been implementing throughout the watershed positively impact everything from nutrient runoff, which I mentioned earlier, to the frequency and severity of harmful algal blooms, to turbidity, and so on. So it's really cool looking back at the years of reports and to see the work that we're doing is having a positive impact on the wealth of waterways that we have here in Western New York.
How's the work with the volunteers? How is it doing this process and training them and going out there in the field?
It is the best part of the job, hands down. It's a lot of work and the culmination of months of planning and countless hours of work by our staff on the back end. But once the field season hits, it's really energizing to see everything up and running. The work really pays off when we get to interact with such enthusiastic, dedicated, intelligent volunteers, and it'll be great to see everyone's faces so regularly.
And so you're getting ready to do all this. We have all these people, but let me throw this at you. Say there's no volunteers to step forward, or we just stop doing this. What's the impact?
Besides putting me out of a job?
Okay, so we don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely not for me. But, all joking aside, the impact would be immeasurable, right? Like I mentioned, we've been at this for years, since our inception, really. There would be some pretty serious data gaps throughout our region. We've become a staple in Western New York for the work we do, and if we were to just disappear overnight, I feel like our collective absence would be felt regionally. As New York State is adjacent to 2 of the 5 Great Lakes, it's really important to hone in on those local and regional sources of pollution. The oceans get a lot of attention for those sources of pollution, namely plastic, but the Great Lakes are suffering just as much, if not more, from those regional impacts and sources of pollution, like those plastic minerals. Hopefully, through some of these efforts, we can get everyone to be as enthusiastic about that message as we are here.
And so we're going to take all this information at the end of the year, put it together, and do a public report for people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another really fun part of the job. And it's where I like to get into the weeds with fun graphs and images that we've taken throughout the year. So it's nice to see kind of a physical final product that summarizes everything that we've been at on a yearly basis. And I think it's probably one of the best ways to get that information out there, have some sort of visual frame of reference for all this somewhat complex data that we collect and, every moving part that we have going on throughout the year.
And so we have it on our website. If you go to bnwaterkeeper.org and search for Riverwatch, there's several spots on the website for the 2022 document.
Right. Yeah. That was published in January. So our 2023 won't be coming out technically until 2024. But we have all of our past year's reports on there as well. So I believe that the 2022 is kind of highlighted on the website, but you can still access all our reports going back to 2012.
Exactly. And if people want to volunteer, they can also go to our website. There's some volunteer opportunities there.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't be afraid to reach out even after the field season starts. We have a rolling base of volunteer opportunities that exist throughout our year, not just our water quality sampling. But if you are interested in any of the programs that I've mentioned today, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to point you in the right direction or, maybe get the ball rolling on getting you involved for next year. There's spots to fill every year in all of these programs.
Rob, thank you so much. This is awesome. Good luck out there. You have a ton to do.
Yeah.
And not just you. I know there's a lot of people with the staff doing it too. Well, good luck.
Yeah, it's all hands on deck, and just happy to be here.
Again, that was Robert Cody, Project Coordinator for Community Engagement for Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper.
So I want to remind people that while we obtain grant funding for projects, donations from people are another huge resource to allow us to keep going forward with our mission of protecting and restoring shorelines and waterways while hopefully expanding what we do. Anything you can give to Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper is huge and helps us out. So go to our website, bnwaterkeeper.org/donate to make a contribution. And again, thanks to local Buffalo band Snowbelt for the music today. They have a new album out, Norris Avenue. You can find that on all the streaming services. We'll have more editions of the show on the way. Subscribe to Between Two Great Lakes to keep up to date with what we're up to. That's all for today. Be well and do good.